All right. Hey, friends, neighbors, countrymen, barrel-chested freedom fighters all around the world. Hey, man, it's time for another episode of Tales from Patrol Base. And today I have a special guest, Lani Ringeisen, a.k.a. Ringo. He's been with three different LRS units. He's done SF. He's had a hell of a career. And he's going to sit here and talk to us. And so Ringo, usually the way I kind of start these things is just tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and kind of how you wound up in the army and how you worked your way to LRS.
Gotcha. Well, I grew up. I was born overseas in Germany, right? I mean, I was an army brat, and but I grew up in Schertz, Texas, down
Okay.
south there by San Antonio. uh, I always been an army brat, so I knew I was going to go in the army. It was obvious with me, you know. And ever through high school, that's all I thought about. What I'm going to do afterwards. So, 18 days after I graduated, I actually went over to Fort Benning right after graduation, and then went to Harmony Church for my infantry basic training OSIT there. I did airborne school back to back with that, and then went to RIP. After RIP, I went to my first duty station up at Fort Lewis
Mm-hmm.
um, with the Second Ranger Battalion Alpha Company. Uh, Spent about a year there with those guys because I was not a smart private. I was becoming a strong private, but I did learn an immense amount of knowledge and skills, I guess, with the year I was there with those guys. um,
Well,
we
many of
only
us
had
just
to,
started there.
huh? What's
Many of
that?
us just started that way. We got
Yeah,
strong before we got smart.
exactly. Uh, we went over to Jordan, did a trip down Honduras. Um, but then I moved on to Ninth ID
What now?
because I left to,
What years were this?
what
What?
years is this? Oh, that was 85,
Okay.
85 to 86. Yeah. I graduated in 85, went in the army right away.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of left unceremoniously, and I got orders for Ninth ID LRSD, which is kind of a blessing in disguise. Um, it's kind of like the hidden gem of the army back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Um, so when I got to Ninth ID LRS, I was assigned to Patrol 3-4 in 3rd Platoon. The platoons were kind of broken up to, first platoon was like the Halo platoon. Second platoon was more the mountain / rough terrain jump platoon, and third platoon was a water ops platoon.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a LRS C, not a LRS D.
Yeah.
Um, and while we're there, I was probably spent a little over a year, about 14 months in Ninth ID LRS before I got levied for Korea. But while I was there, we did multiple FTXs, um, jumps into Yakima Training Center. It was a good experience. Um, we also did a bunch of intel, 2 weeks, like long intel lock-ins, do vehicle identification, Sylvie OB, and all that stuff. So I learned stuff still sticks with me today. So it's like ingrained in my brain now. So because we did it so much back then.
Well, you probably watched the war in the Ukraine. And go, oh, I know exactly what model T-72 that is.
Well, since some of the newer ones I'm not really up to
I don't
speed
know.
on, but yeah, I can definitely tell if it's a 62, 72,
Yeah.
54, whatever, you know,
Hmm.
that's easy. So I got legged for Korea. So off I went to Korea thinking I was going to be in a regular like leg unit, you know. When
Yeah.
I got there, we got in the replacement attachment there in second ID, they called it turtle farm, right? So I'm sitting in the turtle farm, we get this briefing from this MI lieutenant and asking if anybody wanted to volunteer for LRS. You know, he tries to give it how explained to us, and then of course I raised my hand. I jumped at the opportunity to stay in LRS there because it's, you know, in '88 in Korea, that's the time frame it is now. It's the beginning of '88, so like February time frame. They're just starting up, so it's brand new.
Yeah.
So when I got there, we only had like 10 or 12 people in the unit,
Mhm.
so we didn't even have much equipment. Didn't do a whole lot of lure stuff. We had Team Spirit right after I got there, so we didn't really do a lot of lure missions in Team Spirit. We kind of did work with the counter MI counterintelligence guys and did a lot of kind of like urban vehicle type reconnaissance type stuff with those guys.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Um, so after Team Spirit, though, that's when we started building up the unit. Um, start getting people from other units on the peninsula there, and more NCOs and stuff like that. And then we start talking about getting on jump status.
Mhm.
And we're already wearing the maroon berets and stuff like that because it's technically part of the unit headgear. And so um, we went on jump status. I want to say it's around July or so when we start doing that. And then our first series of jumps when we had to do like 4 or 5 jumps, I think it's 5 jumps to kind of get back on the jump status and stuff like that. We did it down in a place called Pyeongtaek,
Mhm.
Salt Flats, DZ. And the cool thing about that was we had the opportunity to jump with Colonel Howard, the Medal of Honor recipient from Vietnam. So
Man,
he was there. And,
one of the war
yeah.
gods.
Yeah, he was over there in Det K. So he came down and jumped with us, and we did 47 jumps out there and stuff. It was actually, we got a big old company photo with him.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man.
Hmm. But while we're there, most of our missions in Korea were helo inserts. We didn't really jump in missions once we got on status. We just jumped for pay. We did a couple more jumps down south, towards Busan for pay. But then towards the end of the year, we start um, working to do DMZ missions because the regular infantry units were doing their DMZ patrols,
Yeah.
and they get up there and do the get all their live rounds, and they get up there and do their little ambush and recon patrols. So we kind of got second ID to allow us to do a hide site within the DMZ and stuff like that. So the first mission was Team 5, a guy named Sergeant McGavro's team, and they went in there and did one, but it's like a 2-part mission. They would do like a regular LRS mission outside the DMZ, and then they'll link up with the battalion, kind of doing like an admin link up,
Hmm.
and then prep all the stuff, do the back briefs, and then they go in and do a live hide site mission. And they did it up in the northeast, around Pamajan, but kind of on the northeast side of Pamajan. And the next month, and that was in October of '88, and it's pretty cold. Actually, in the first part mission, they had a swim across the MGM. So they did a 6-man team did a ruck swim across the MGM with individual rucks. So
Oh,
it was a kind of a freezing event for those guys, but they all made it across.
and
Check that off the block.
y'all didn't have Gore-Tex and all that stuff you had back then.
Yeah, I mean, we just had the BDUs, and then we had some of those wool button-down shirts and stuff, that have been around since the '50s, which are
Yeah.
very effective, by the way, and that's what we used a lot in the wintertime,
Mm.
minus the water stuff. Um, so my team 1 was supposed to go in November. It got canceled and then pushed back to December. So, but we found out later right before we went on our mission in December that a NKPA patrol came across in the same area we were supposed to do it in November. It happened in November, so we kind of missed out on an opportunity to be involved in that situation. But we went anyways, and when we do those missions there, we kind of go through a South Barrier Gate along the main road that goes up to Pamajan, and then we kind of move up to designated routes because within the DMZ there's minefields and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
routes were limited, and so we moved down this riverbed for about a click or so, and we're using these riverbed dikes and berms for covering concealment from the North Korean towers. So we set up on a height site on the backside of one of these dikes that's right across from these guard towers. Uh, but our kind of directive was kind of look for North Korean infiltrators. We had rotating height site up there, um, and also look at any activity on the south side. So there's a propaganda village called Taesongdong.
Mhm.
Uh, it lies about 350 meters from the actual MDL, and we were a little further off to the southwest of them.
Mm.
But we're closer where our position was. We're actually closer to the MDL. We were like maybe 7,500 meters from the MDL on the other side of that berm. So main thing, nothing really happened when we were there. It was pretty quiet. So we think that after the incident the month prior, um, they didn't really try again until later.
Yeah.
Um, but we kind of froze our butts off because it's December in Korea, so it was pretty cold. Sleeping with our cameras because we had the old 35 millimeter film cameras,
Oh wow.
and film cameras, and then our, radios and batteries and water, everything, just sleep with it.
What radios were you all running back then?
Well, for that DMZ mission, we had to use the SINGARs because they used the frequency up with the infantry units for everything. But for the HF, we did eventually get 104s, but we're using a different data device called PSC2, which is more of a FO type device they were using.
Mhm.
So that's all we had in country. We didn't get DMAGs until later.
Yeah.
A lot of our antennas are field expedient antennas with FM and HF, and then we finally got some gray 50s
Yeah.
antenna kits. So
Yeah. Hey, in our conversation, you kind of brought up something earlier about because to me it was always stuck in my head: stay off trails, stay off trails.
oh yeah.
You were talking about doing training, how you all ran trails. And,
Yeah, in Korea, it's like if you look back in the history of Korea, then the Korean War, that's what the Chinese used to move quickly, to to cut off, like in the Chosen Rhythm for. They ran the ridge line, stuff like that. It's not the it's used in different situations, right? We stayed off trails as much as we could, but there's times when you had to make distance and make ground, so you had to kind of trade security for speed, and but you also extend your security out by basically having your point man move ahead, setting up on the trail when the main body stayed back, move up about 100, 150 meters, get on a knee. We had PVS 14s in our point man back then, but we mainly start using that the second time I was in Korea. And then the main body would move forward where the ATL would stay back, watch the rear. So if the main body picks up the rest of the four guys, anybody who's trying to track us or follow us, they would see that. The only thing we risk on is really leaving tracks on the trail and stuff like that. But most of those trails are pretty hard packed because there's bunker systems. It's all over South Korea. It was like there's a layer of defense systems on those ridge lines. So, but we did move across country a few times, depending on the terrain. But sometimes you start doing this, trying to move a straight line distance. It does not make no sense. It
no,
doesn't pass common sense.
and it burns your time and burns out your Joes. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and when you're carrying 75, 80 pound rucksacks with radios and stuff.
And you mentioned the mine. There was a lot of minefields, or that somewhere.
Yeah, up in Korea, there's minefields within the DMZ, but there's also older minefields south of the DMZ in certain areas. Um, so sometimes you would have to get a minefield map overlay, and it's
Mhm.
not 100% accurate. So when you go in certain areas, like we had a train area called Dagmar North that we went up to, and excuse me, and you had to get the map overlays and stuff like that. But sometimes you find yourself moving down a draw off a ridge line down to like a flat area for an exfil. And usually if it's flat, obviously would have it all cleared out. It's either a rice paddy or a hill to ridge line. Because the train goes like this straight to like that almost sometimes. So we were moving. I know one time we were moving through a creek, dry little creek. It's very overgrown in that area. Even the flat areas where you think it would be, the cranes would kind of cut it all down. And we crossed over a fence line onto this link up point where this little other trail and road network was. Um, there was the red triangle signs, for mines in Korean was like about 5, 10 meters off to our left. So when we all got out, it's like I was point man. So basically, I get out, turn around, and be like, "Okay, there's a minefield sign. I'm not going to say anything to anybody until we all get out." Because if everybody gets out, then we kept on moving off to our link up point, which is just up the road for a truck exfil.
Mhm.
So it's like an admin exfil we did that day. But yeah, you got to worry about the minefield stuff like that. Um,
Well, and the thing about mines is, especially if mines have been in the ground a long time, they'll shift. I mean,
yeah,
it may have a map, but it may minefields move.
yeah.
So
I mean, I think it would kind of either there's none there anymore, or walking on those rocks in that creek bed was really kind of saved our butts. But who knows? I mean, we all made it out, so
yeah, that's the main thing. You made it out.
yeah. So so I spent about a year in Korea there. Um, another thing you got to worry about up there by the DMZ is as you depending where you're at, like one mission we did up by Dagmar North again. It was where the engine kind of runs down through the DMZ and comes into South Korea. The North Koreans used to infiltrate, get in the river and try to infiltrate across the DMZ that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the South Koreans run live patrols on the south side of the DMZ, outside the DMZ on their end. So and they used to set up a little checkpoints or ambushes and stuff like that. And we were moving down. It wasn't really a trail; it's kind of like a rolling farmland area. So we're moving through that and coming by these berms. You had a kind of a choke point, um, and then we hear the Koreans bolts go forward, and we hear bolts go forward, and then then we hear the Koreans saying something Hangul to us, and the only thing I can remember was American word for in Korean was miguk. So I was saying miguk, right? And then I think my team leader, he a little further, a couple guys behind me, and he said something else in Korean because he knew a little bit more than I did at the time. And so they came down. They had a Korean guy who spoke a little bit English, and we kind of figured out they were doing live patrols, and they're asking why we were there. We explained why we were there, we're training and stuff like that. So they let it. We moved on, but it was one of those situations that could have turned ugly, also.
Yeah, a
But
blue on blue is probably one of the scariest things that can happen.
yes, yeah, it was nighttime too, so it
Oh
didn't
yeah.
help much.
Did they? I wonder if they did they
So,
have NVGs as well, or
they didn't have nothing. They didn't have NVGs. We barely had NVGs that first year there. We had PVS 14s, and we put them
yeah,
on our PVS 4s, should I say, not 14s, 4s. We
yeah,
mounted those to our point man's rifles,
yeah.
and we actually had to go zero. We made sure we zeroed them and stuff like that at range. But
Mm.
that's what we used to use. They worked. They
Hey,
served the purpose. But
hey, man, they were DS4 state of the art in what 1979. So you got to work with what you got, you know.
yeah,
But the
that's
fact
true.
that the Koreans had no night vision makes it harder to figure out you're American. So that was definitely kind of scary. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Well,
mean,
they had their procedures. Them letting their bolts go forward is more of a, I think it's one of their kind of procedure to let whoever's out there know that there's someone there. So
uh, well, and you said you did a year in Korea. Where'd you go after Korea?
Korea, I tried to go back. I tried to go to some place cool like Vicenza or something like that, but when I re-enlisted, I couldn't get it. So I tried to get on orders down to Fort Hood because I'm from Texas, so couldn't get that. So I picked Fort Riley. So and I found out there was a LRS unit there in Fort Riley at first ID. So I talked to the company commander at second ID to get me into first ID.
Yeah.
And so he made a phone call. So when I did arrive in the replacement attachment there in Fort Riley, Kansas, they already have an NCOs go down there every day, every few days to see who would show up, and then they do some recruiting. So I got in first ID pretty easy.
Yeah. That experienced LRS guy were in short supply right back then.
Yeah, this is 89 now. So I got there around March of 89, after I took some leave, and I was at E5 already by the time, because I made E5 over in Korea. And so I came in as an ATL on team 4. And so far I played HFRTO, ninth ID. I played and a little bit of FMRTO, and I played SSO in Korea and ATL in Korea when I made it 5. And then now in first ID as an ATL in team 4. And then I became a TL for a little bit too because we didn't have enough E6s
Mhm.
in the company. So and common gear there, the gear we used there, they had 104s, they had some field expedient Nevises,
Mhm.
and stuff like that is what we used. And then later on, we actually got the iron low profile antenna, the ELPA, right before we went to Desert Storm.
Yeah.
So, but in '89, we started sending guys to Lerslick down
Yeah.
in Benning. So I went in like November '89. I went to Lerslick, and of course, like Korea, we weren't on jump status at first.
Yeah.
So when we got first started more in 1990, then the following year, he started working to get us on jump status, which we did, and we were on jump status. I want to say it was about July, August time again,
Mhm.
and so we did some jumps right there for Riley, and then first ID had to. go out to NTC, but you know, as you know, if you jump on an airplane, the Air Force pays for the fuel, right? Because
Yeah.
it's training for
Right.
them, the loadmasters and stuff. So they asked us if we can jump in to 29 Palms for them so they can help pay for have the Air Force pay for the aircraft versus First ID paying for it.
Well,
So we're like, sure. So we jumped into 29 Palms, hung around for about a week, and then jumped back in with them for them on back to Fort Riley.
okay.
And yeah, so
Oh, that's,
uh, and then when we got back and we heard that Desert Storm kicked off, right?
yeah.
Uh, so we're like getting worried that we're going to be heading out to Desert Storm too. So we end
Oh,
up
Desert
going in
Shield. Yeah, Desert Shield. It still
Day
does.
Shield, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I call it all Desert Storm because it's pretty much all the same thing.
Well,
But yeah,
yeah.
so
I'm
we went in January of '91 to about May of '91 when we went to Desert Storm.
yeah. I'm the same way, except I just call it all Desert Shield because
No,
I got there in August, and I think we left the end of May. So,
yeah.
uh, but yeah, it is what it is, man. So tell
Yeah,
us about,
so
yeah, definitely tell
good.
us what you did in Iraq, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When we got there, we're at Cobar Towers area, so we did a lot of training until we got kind of pushed out to our operational area and stuff like that. So Mike Moore had us doing all kinds of MOP 4 training, you know, gives all the scuds and stuff. And then we're dealing with all the scuds and stuff coming in and stuff like that. And one funny incident as we're in a bus and Humvees, because we didn't have a lot of vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Uh, we had basically a Humvee and a deuce and a half and a rat rig or two or something like that.
That's about
And
it.
as we're going down Tapline Road and we're going out to the assembly areas. And so I'm me and a guy named Jim Foster, nicknamed Motor. We're sitting up front on the bus, and we look out the window. And our first sergeant's driving by and had his gas mask on. He's going and gives us a gas symbol. We're like, holy shit! So we pull off the road. Everybody pulls off the road. Me and Motor get off, and everybody comes running off with their gear, right, to put on the gas mask and stuff, the
Yeah.
Mach 4 and stuff. But our stuff is still stuck on the bird, so we have to wait for everybody to get off the damn bus so we can get back on and grab our shit. So we kind of
Oh,
get in a little bit of a perimeter. And then we everybody's masking up at the time, and the scuds were about, I guess, like blew up nearby us, up above us and stuff. And so we're trying to look for 256 kits.
yeah.
Couldn't
The
find a 256 kits. So first sergeant when it initiated a demasking procedure.
okay.
Uh, and I had a brand new private on my team. I was the ATL at the time because we got some E6s in right before we left, and so I told him to go over there and see the first sergeant. By the way, give me your weapon. He goes over there, he's all calm, and I'm like, well, this guy's pretty calm for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he goes over there and uh they do the demasking procedures. I'm like watching him, and he comes back and I give him his weapon. I was like, that's a little later when we kind of demask and get back on the bus. I was like, hey, you were pretty calm for that. And he goes, yeah, my mask wasn't even sealed yet. So I knew if I was going to die, I was going to die already. So a demasking procedure, I wasn't really masked up anyway. So
He,
it's like,
he-
okay.
he's like, I'm already screwed. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll get an
But
8 a.m. out of this or something if I live.
yeah. But when we got out to the train area, out to the assembly areas, stuff like that. We worked on what kind of height sites we're going to do in the desert because it's kind of new to us. We're still doing surface hides, semi subsurface stuff, but doing total subsurface hides in a flat desert was new to us.
Well, it's tough
We
to
tried it, yeah.
really,
We
and it varies on the desert. Some places are sandy, some places hard rock, hard as rock. I mean,
yeah,
it's brutal.
yeah.
It can be brutal.
We tried individual like 2-man hides and stuff. We tried T's and Y's, trying to keep it narrow because we tested using some Bradleys to test rollovers.
Yeah,
See what hides will survive the best. And in there, and so most of us used a T shape or a Y shape with 2 people per leg. The heights I kept it tight. Overhead cover was another issue. We didn't have nothing desert. IOBs were green. We had green
yeah.
ponchos. We
Everything's
even our mop suit were green.
yeah,
Only thing that we had desert camouflage was our uniforms. But when you're in MOP 2, wearing
Yeah.
your MOP uniform, it's all green, right?
Yeah.
So for our hide sites, we wore a MOP too when we went on our missions though. We were wearing DCUs, we just didn't wear that stuff.
Mhm.
But when we were out in our hide sites, we had to figure out overhead cover. Even though we had air superiority, it wasn't really a major issue. We just had to worry about getting seen from a distance at a higher elevation. If the terrain kind of raised up, they would have a little bit of advantage seeing the hole. Some guys carried 2 feet by 3 feet pieces of plywood per guy, and they used that for the overhead cover, so they buried it back over after they dug.
Yeah.
We kind of used a dirt to make kind of like a raised berm around ours a little bit, and kind of spread it out after we set our iron claymores, and kind of stole the tan curtains off the bus.
Yeah. Okay.
So hand sewn that stuff together and gave us it was a perfect color for that desert out there. So
You got to do
use
what
that
you
for our
got.
rig. Yeah, the bus didn't need curtains, so.
Bus didn't need them anyway.
But
Saudis.
movement through there was also another issue we had. Um, most of the times we're always running Ranger files, right? Around Fort Riley or Korea or whatever. Uh, but out there, the whole thing is a linear danger area.
Yeah,
So
it
we
is.
kind of, like my team decided to do a kind of a Y formation.
Mm-hmm.
The two-point man out there about 50 meters apart, about 100 meters or so ahead of everybody, kind of paralleling each other, kind of covering each other at the same time. It's kind of, instead of having your slack man behind you, you kind of have it next to you.
Yeah.
And then the main body was behind us, the rest of the guys, which was pretty much the TO and the RTOs. So
Yeah.
basically, I had the ATO, which was me, and the SSO was up front.
Yeah.
And we had 14s on that one, though, so which is good.
Well, that's not a bad idea. I mean, that's not, I mean, that'll work.
Mhm.
Did you all have PBS sevens?
Now I had one PBS 14, and then I think my team leader had one.
Oh, okay. Wow. You
Yeah,
did not have a lot of night vision.
no, yeah, we didn't have inter-team comms or a whole lot night vision.
Damn, that's rough. That is rough.
And we also had to move anywhere from 3 to 5 clicks, depending where we got dropped off, because we were infilled by Bradleys.
Uh-huh.
So the scouts will do their they'll pick us up back in the link up area, and then we'll put like 3 in each Bradley, and then we'll roll out with a platoon of Bradleys, and then they'll go out to the edge of their screen line and maybe a little bit in front of it, depending on the terrain, and drop the ramps, and then we get off. They drive back. I forget how far they do back normally, but they go back into Overwatch, and then we'll ruck up and move north towards Iraq, pretty much in no man's land, and we kind of had to time our infill with hours of limited visibility, also before the moonrise.
Mhm.
So our goal was to get in our hide site for the moonrise, because when that moon came out there, you just felt like you're underneath the spotlight.
Oh yeah, you could really see well in that desert with the moons up. That's for sure.
Yeah. And they had, of course, Iraqis had ground surveillance radar and stuff like that, but we don't know how good that was.
Well, you all were looking at the berms. Is that what?
We were on either on this side of the berm like everybody else was. The berm was kind of like do not cross it whatsoever, at the time. So we're more of a counter, more of a defensive, additional speed bump till he got to the cat screen line before he got to the forward line of troops. So we did when the groundwork kicked off. After my team was actually in our hole out there, and whole first ID was online, pretty much moved forward to the breach point because they had the mission of the breach, and they expected like 85% casualties and stuff like that. So they expected, the division expected to be mission incapable once they do the breach, because all the intel they satellite imagery and stuff like that depicted a bunch of vehicles, defilades and stuff, but some of those vehicles weren't even running.
Yeah.
When we found out later, but we basically stayed in our holes. They rolled over past us, then kind of stayed in a hole until the Bradleys kind of came down the line there, our extraction Bradleys. So we should have, before that, we got mission information about the rollover. We were supposed to walk back, 4 clicks for a link up with the Bradleys. So they gave us a DMAG message saying, hey, cancel all that, stay in your hole. So we just waited for them to roll past us, hoping we don't get shot and they don't think we're some Iraqis. But actually, they rolled past and didn't know we were there. Because when we came out of the holes, when those Bradleys rolled up, they all kind of like, who the heck is back there? you know,
Yeah,
they'd be staying there the whole time.
yeah, that far recognition, near recognition concepts. Yeah, that's kind of a tough way to do it.
Yeah, we did have an NFA around us, no fire error on our
Okay.
grid.
Uh,
So if that was being tracked by the ground commanders, and we should have been good, but
yeah, yeah.
it happens all the time.
Coulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny how we talked about how we thought. I remember my company commander telling us right before we went in because I was in the line then. It's like, last year we fought the Panamanians, turned out to be a piece of cake. This time it's not, and lo and
Mhm.
behold, they're surrendering left and right.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were after the groundwork kicked off. We linked back up with the MI battalion, and I'm riding back of Charlie Company's Humvee with my team. Some of our lurch guys are in our deuce and a half over on the other end of this 3-column movement. Sometime during the night, refueling and stuff like that, we actually got to the west of the maneuver brigades and maneuver battalions that are ahead of us. Instead of being behind them, we got to the left of them, and so we stopped, and we had there was a Brit, one Brit track was with the MI guys, and they noticed it first, and then at least everybody else stops, So I get out and I go up to the company commander for Charlie Gun. I was like, "What are you guys looking at? What's up there?" And they're like, pull up our spotter scopes, and I see a front glaciers with a BMP-1. I see a T, I think it was like a T-62 tank, MTLBs, all in these defilade positions, and a white flag. And so 75 Iraqis surrendered to my 6-man team. Me and the Brits, we rolled up there, and they surrendered to us. And we walked them back. And as I look over, there's actually a company plus of Iraqis out there. And some of the other Lurch guys were out there, picking up, more people surrendering and stuff. And it was just funny because to interpreter, they thought a track that the MI guys had was like a big antenna mast was in this case on top of his like a 577 track.
Yeah.
It's like called a Turkey 42 or something, some kind of jammer. But they thought that was some kind of Star Wars missile, something. So they're like, screw this. They've been getting their asses bombed from planes and tanks hitting them out from limited field. Tanks are popping people out there farther than the max effective range of this tank. So,
Oh yeah. We definitely our tankers definitely outrange theirs, and plus we're better optics.
yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Hey, so you're good at EPW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, we searched them, uh, gave them a little first aid, and then gave them an MRE and told them to walk that way. Put a white band on their arm, and that's all we
Yeah.
did.
It's like, yeah, I think, yeah, that was quite a ordeal. Just, I remember we were supposed to be back at town at midnight. I was going to take a nap. Um, I took like I lay down for, I was like, hey, I'm gonna lay down for 20 minutes. And then I woke up, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, what the fuck? What the hell's going on? And my platoon sergeant's like, hey man, ceasefire. I just let you sleep. I'm like, oh, thanks. That was day 3 or 4 in Iraq. So, but yeah, so you're moving on. I mean, tell me what other interesting stuff do you have happening in Iraq?
That's pretty much it. After the ground war is just hurry up and wait. We just went back to assembly area after all the kind of did the big end around with first ID. Went to assembly area there outside of Kuwait, and finally moved back to Khobar Towers and flew home
Yeah,
back to Fort Riley.
yeah.
So, and that was like May of, so everything is all green in Fort Riley. So, being in the
Oh
desert
yeah.
for so long, everything looks so green. It's pretty
Mhm.
crazy. But then we started working towards doing some JTF-6 missions. And
Mhm.
we did one down in southern New Mexico. So we staged down a Hollow Man Air Base as a company, and we did a
Yeah.
bunch of Lurch hide sites and worked with those guys down there doing
That,
those things.
the JTF-6 missions were actually a good utilization of LRS.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's train denial,
I mean,
because they would do back then the border patrol, whatever, would be doing things in one area, and they'll put us guys, in a hide site in
mhm.
overwatching a valley or a little area where they have infiltration and stuff like that, and like our job was in the area. It was kind of a big old vast valley in southern New Mexico, north of Del City, Texas, they would fly in. Little planes would fly in, land, transload stuff over to cars, and then they'll go off. And then we were just pulling surveillance on that big old valley in the high ground. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's good training, and
mm,
dang. But I mean, and you could actually run into somebody who, I mean, there were definitely smugglers out there doing stuff. So it is what it is.
yeah, dude, that was what that was late '91. So a lot of activity down there. And then even after I left First ID, they're still doing utilizing the JTF6 missions as good FTXs and training and stuff like that.
Well, I know that JTF6 continued for a long time, and there was some deal. I want to say it was some Marines actually they shot a goat herder or something. It was a bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
Animal.
as a Marine that had that incident, I forget exactly what it was, but kind of shut it down. We couldn't even like we weren't too close to it. We were within the southern New Mexico, so we weren't even close to the border when we did ours. But yeah, you couldn't be within a certain area of the border
Yeah,
after that incident. You had to do everything further back.
yeah. It is what it is. But
Mhm.
so after Fort Riley and First ID, where were you headed to next?
Well, I re-enlisted again and went back to Korea.
Okay.
But this time I was a little smarter. I
No.
was at E5 still. So I took 2 weeks in country leave because I heard the alerts unit moved from where they're at Camp Hobie to some other place up in Western Corridor, closer to the DMZ. So I decided to take 2 weeks in country leave. So I arrived in country, went up to a hotel and by Tongachong by Second ID, and then I found out they were over by this place called Camp Gario in Yanjigo. So I took a cab out there and knocked on the door. Said, "Hey, I'm on leave. I'm starting so and so, and I want to be in the unit, And I kind of gave them a background that I was here when it first began and stuff like that. So I got orders for it, and I went back to Turtle Farm, got my orders, and did that whole processing thing, and then I went back up there to Yanjigo.
Yeah.
And a little later on, we moved again to Camp Camp Pelham, which is by Sandaree. It's not too
Mhm.
far from where we're at. So
Yeah.
good thing is they're still in jump status, so that was a good point.
Yeah.
Um, and we did a lot of FTXs when I was there the second time.
I
Um,
assume the equipment was a little situation was a little bit better.
yeah, we still had 104s. We had DMAGs at that time. Like I said, in '88, we didn't get them until after I left, or right when I was leaving, I think. Uh, but got DMAGs, and then we also had the I-ring low profile antennas over there too, which I was very familiar with because I used them in the desert, and so that was good, and used the heck out of that thing. So they were great in the hilltops and stuff in Korea. We did a lot of missions for Division G2. Then we used to brief back to our brief backs would be to Division G2, not
That's
just
good.
some MI guy or your company commander, but they actually had us looking at certain areas for them and certain things because they were not we're only not a they were not only worried about North Korea, they were also worried about South Korea starting kicking something off and they're not expecting it. So every
Well,
time we were supposed to report on anything that moved, South Korean or whatever. But
well,
we didn't do any DMZ missions though, so it's all south of the DMZ.
I remember like after Desert Storm, the next really big hot spot was Korea, and I remember Korea was supposed to be pretty possibly being pretty active, and so yeah, I mean, and Division G2 is using it. That's good. Had
Yeah, no, it's made a kind of like a purpose to it. We weren't just down there training; we actually had a mission.
definitely. Wow. Did uh had the I because I remember you had talked you had to help write some of the SOPs initially, and
Mhm.
it's kind of cool. Say, hey man, I what you're doing, I wrote.
Yeah, I mean, and like with anything, with depends on team leaders and ATOs. You get SOPs vary and stuff like that. But Korea, you know, you're humping around these yamas that are like tall. Terrain was rough.
Mhm.
So, you had to kind of stick to those kind of TTPs and stuff like that. So we always set up on all the infiltration corridors that coming down from the DMZ from the north, like Chowan Valley and all these other ones, and that's what we pull surveillance on.
Yeah.
Uh, one kind of mission we did, we nicknamed it Mount Diablo because it kicked our ass. Uh, we basically did a helo insert outside in this valley south of the mountain. It was just outside of a rock camp because none of the rock camps are marked on the maps back then. But
Mhm.
when you're going in, you notice that there's a rock camp right there. So
Okay.
then we start worrying about minefields again, right? So
Yeah.
we didn't run into any this time, but we basically got up and we started going up this Yama, or what we called Yama Mountain, right? At the top of to get up and over the other side to watch this big valley that goes from the DMZ straight down, and then it branches off and hits another corridor. So we're kind of watching that apex there. And I was ATL at the time, so I'm in the back and we're going up this draw, and I'm like, this draw's kicking our butt. And then all of a sudden we're about good quarter ways or almost halfway up it. And then we stop for a halt. TL calls me up and basically said, the point man is like exhausted,
Yeah.
right? Hyperthermic. It's like 40, 50 degrees out. He's sweating. So we
Mhm.
stop and get him all squared away. Get a buddy in the bag with him, and he gets a little bit better. And then gets a little more. He like didn't know where he was for a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I took point over. So I just bumped up on a finger and took the finger up to the ridge, and it was a little bit easier movement for us. And then we get up on a high site, and we're like, feels like we're on top of the world. It was like, it's probably over 1,500 feet elevation for that mountain there. It's like 500 some meters.
Yeah.
It's a good hump.
I mean, it's
And
probably, you said they're mostly straight up there anyway. So,
oh yeah, I mean the mountain's been like there's no gradual incline like you see in some places.
straight up, straight down.
Mhm. But good thing we had. I think we had like 2 to 3 PPS 14s per team. We had decent gear and good SOPs and stuff like that. And again, I came as a ATL when I got there. Team leader left for emergency leave, never came back, so I became TL again as an E5. And then when we moved to Camp Pelham, we got another E6 in, good dude named Richard Anderson. And
Mhm.
so he came over my team and he became my TL. So I went back to ATL. So
One of the things a question I always had, like for like guys who were in career stuff like that, was there very much access to sending guys to school like jump master?
well, well in '88 we actually sent guys from Korea to Bend New Jump School.
Yeah.
A couple, you know, some of them made it and came back, and some quit and didn't come back, and
Yeah.
so it's no big deal on that. But and then most of the schools that guys went there in country were like the Rock Ranger School or a
Yeah.
form of it, one that Americans go to
Yeah.
down in Chejudo Island. uh, I think I don't know if they didn't do when I was there, both tours I was there, but I don't know if they did it at any other time. Was get to Korean Airborne School, which they do balloons. They jump on the balloons.
But yeah, I've always heard about balloons. I've never got to jump
Yeah, I never got to jump one either, but I think that's pretty cool.
that.
Uh, I mean, so far, we had Katusas the first time we were over there, but we had them in our commo shops. And then
Mhm.
the second time over there, we actually had Katusas per team,
Yeah.
so which is good. So we have to patrol, and if you ever run into a South Korean patrol or whatnot, you had someone there that spoke English and Korean. So
You were talking about one Katusa last time we visited. You had a really good story about him. He was like, I want to say he was a
yeah, we had yeah,
taekwondo.
he wasn't on my team; he was on another team, but he was in our company in '92. Second time I was there, and he was like the national Taekwondo champion and stuff like that. But like Katusas usually go for the 2 years and they go back to school and finish off their college degree, and they come from kind of families with money and stuff normally.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's mandatory for be either do Katusa or go in the Rock Army. Well, this guy did the Katusa thing and then he went into the Rock Army, so he was pretty hard dude.
Yeah.
Go from Katusa into the Rock Army is kind of a big jump.
Yeah, that is. But wow, national taekwondo champion. You're probably kind of studly.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, all those Katusas are definitely making ruck.
yeah. All
you
right.
know, and so
That's cool, man.
and they had all our gear, so they were good with that.
Now, so and you all had moved over to the Cav but squadron because that's
Yeah, the first time we were with MI, and the second time they moved us to the Cav because I guess in the time frame between the first time I was there, so between 89 and 92, uh, I think the unit got had some issues or something like that. I think it was mainly with the command.
yeah.
So they kept like one NCO and all the enlisted, and they moved them up to Camp Gurion underneath 517 Cav, and gave us a new company commander, Captain Close, which was an outstanding Ranger. Uh, and we had to do a big exeval right after I got there. We did this big division level exeval to kind of prove our worth again, which is we passed the flying colors. So we had a lot of good guys get back in the unit.
It sounds like it's a good, very good place to be.
Oh, I enjoyed it. The 2 years over there, I was like, I wouldn't say my best lurch times over there, but it was definitely up there.
Yeah, that's good. Well, where so that you did 12 months there, what's next in your adventures?
That ended my lurch career after 6 years of continuous being lurch.
That's a great run.
No, it was very enjoyable. And then I got orders for Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I tried to get down those orders because I heard all the horror stories you'd never leave, right?
Yeah.
But hindsight, I went down to Bragg and I got assigned to the 3rd 504th.
Yep. Blue Devil.
Uh, yeah, Alpha Company, 3rd Platoon. I was at E5. I think I was E5P, so I just needed to go to B knock to get pinned E6, right? I made the points already.
Mm-hmm.
And funny thing is, they wanted to give me a squad, and I said, I don't want a squad. And Platoon Sergeant's like, what? I was like, yeah, I haven't done infantry tactics in over 6 years. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I can patrol, but you tell me to go clear trench line, it's like a hog looking at a wristwatch.
Yeah.
You know, I can't clear. I mean, I don't know. I haven't cleared a bunker or a trench line. And, didn't really do it when I was in Ranger Battalion either. When I was a private, we did a bunch of patrolling down there in South Rainier and stuff like that. But so let me be a team leader, and when I go to BNOC and actually pin on E6, I'll take over a squad.
That's a pretty smart thing to do because
Oh,
yeah,
like I said, I was becoming a smart private now.
yeah. Well,
So,
because remember, coming to Lurs, and every Lurs unit I ever hit, we get somebody from division or Ranger Battalion or something, and they wanted to kill everybody, which was great. Don't get me wrong, killing bad guys is an awesome thing, but it's like our job is to do reconnaissance and surveillance. You got to deprogram a little bit.
yeah, you got to hide from the guys, but at the same time try to see them. Which is kind of a counter
Yeah.
reaction.
You got to sneak up on them. Don't cut their throat. Take a picture,
Yeah.
or get a grid coordinate so we can get. So, but yeah, 3rd Battalion was a good battalion. I was there. I had a good time when I was there in B
Now
Company.
we had, yeah, I mean, I think you left what, 92?
Yeah, I left in 92.
Yeah, I got there in 93. We had Vince Myers, a battalion sergeant major, and I want to say Colonel Abrams. I want to say off the top of my head, tall black guy,
You had
outstanding.
Shaka
Huh?
Zulu.
Bakashula Zulu 6, as it's called.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew him
Run
from.
6 miles with a cigar in his mouth. Those guys were an outstanding battalion command team that I experienced. They're all hardcore. They don't care about one thing, was being a paratrooper and running to the sounds of the guns.
Yeah,
So
and
while I was there in 93 and third 504, um, I got to, I went to BNOC, went to jump master school. So, fell in love with being a jump master and stuff like that. And so when I went to jump master school and got my certification, I can put on my wings. I never put on senior wings because I already had 65 jumps because I've been in jump status pretty much my whole career.
yeah,
And I already had the required mass tax and stuff like that you had to have on your stuff, right? Nighttime combat equipment and all
yeah.
that. And and when we were getting,
Jumped over.
so back in company formation and depending on my master wings, my first sergeant wasn't master rated; he was senior rated. The only person who can do it was the other platoon sergeants. The only ones who can give me the whole hammer fist of putting the wings in my chest, right? And I kind of talked shit a little bit to the first sergeant and kind of rubbed it in that he couldn't punch me in the chest. 2 days later, he calls me in his office. He goes, "I'm your first sergeant. I can do what the hell I want. Stand at parade rest." Then he took the backings off my wings and he pounded in my chest. So, hey.
Fair enough.
So,
well, that time frame was Haiti and Green Ramp, and there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I was involved in the Green Ramp incident. I had another Lurch buddy of mine who was over in second ID with me the second time. He was actually in 05 and he was involved in there. He was actually, I think when the F-16 actually hit the tarmac, went through the 141s, went by the pack shed. He was actually on the backside of the pack shed. He jumped underneath the Humvee and the Humvee kind of blew up a little bit above him. But yeah, I lost a couple buddies who I went to VNOC with from 05 on that one. So.
Yeah, and for our listeners who aren't familiar with it, Green Ramp, Pope Air Force Base, a battalion I think it was a battalion task force was loading up to go do a jump, and an Air Force F-16 pilot was taking off, had some mechanical issue.
They clipped a C-130. One of them were doing touch and goes, and they hit a C-130, and then the C-130 kind of recovered. F-16 guys ejected, and the F-16 hit the tarmac, the runway, and it just blasted right through a bunch of guys lined up behind aircraft. Big old fireball.
Killed a bunch. Bad day.
Yeah, it was an ugly day. And then got to participate in the Haiti 180. And the Haiti in 94 was going down. And so I was the assistant jump master for my platoon sergeant on the 3rd aircraft. And we had I guess he went to a meeting with the PL and came back and goes, "You want to be a jump master on the 4th the primary jump master on the 4th airplane?" I'm like, "Heck yeah." Like, I thought they already had one. And he goes, "I guess none of them wants to take that primary jump master slot." There's two. One of the guys was like a former black hat or something, but none of those guys, the 2 jump masters, didn't want the primary position. I was like, "I'll take it."
Okay.
So I moved to the 4th aircraft, right? And the day we were rigging up, we're cutting off all the safety wires. It's supposed to be, 500 feet, AGL jump. It was kind of rainy. So we're underneath the wings of the C-130. So we get everybody on there. And then the loadmaster comes up. He goes, "You got to go to your bump aircraft. Your left engine's on fire. So we got to shut her down. So you have to move everybody." And I already rigged all the rucks up on everybody because I wasn't going to mess with in-flight rigging on the 130.
Yeah.
And so I got everybody back off and we're waddling on down to the next aircraft, which was like 2 down, and then get everybody back on the aircraft. And then we taxi off and we're en route. And about halfway down is when I actually had the battalion commander of 42325 on the aircraft, and I was a primary jump master. So he comes walking back from the front of the aircraft talking to the pilots. That's when we find out Jimmy Carter and those guys were on the ground and negotiated what's his face to leave. And then we start turning around. Kind of ticked me off. It's like this close.
I imagine that would pretty much piss you off a great deal.
Yeah. So we went back to the Corps Martian area and sat around there for 3 days doing pre-jump every day, waiting for 10th Mountain to do their helo and certain to Port-au-Prince Airport where we were supposed to jump in. So
I didn't even like it when my philosophy was if I'm on the airplane and I've got all my stuff, we're jumping because I don't want.
Yeah, it's like doing those racetracks around Sicily in high winds, and you're doing your 4th racetrack with a 70-pound rucksack. Just get me off the plane. I deal with the winds.
Yeah, exactly. Winds are 13 knots and holding. I don't care. Just get me off of the plane.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So good.
And you did a trip too up there. You had a real good trip.
What's that?
Didn't you do an Alaska trip too? An NWT?
Yeah. That was at the beginning of 94. We had Alaska rotation, NWTC as a company. So we went up there and did those snowshoeing, skiing, all that, winter survival stuff up there, which is a good learning experience, really big. And then I went to selection in 94, also in June of 94. It was like the last class to do before they shut down for the summertime.
Yeah.
And And then we went to, I think it was August. No, it was August '93. We went to Panama to GOTC. Went down there and did a rotation with the company. Actually, the whole battalion went down there.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. JOTC was still going.
Yeah, they changed it from like JOTB to JOTC, and you still run it down there at Fort Sherman.
Yeah.
And you had that's where I seen old Vince Myers and
Hmm.
the colonel running around with M4s or A2s at the time, should I
Yeah.
say, and running through the jungle looking, going to the sound of guns is like they're picking the weapons off the guys who are wounded on the big
Wounded and going.
LTX day. Yeah,
Well, that's pretty cool. I had a
they're
buddy who
good.
went on vacation down in Panama last December. He went over to Sherman and all over there, and it ain't what it
Yeah,
used to be.
there's jungle stuff, cold weather stuff. I mean, that's good learning experiences. Take a
It's
lot away from those places.
great learning experiences. So, I mean, you want to tell us a little bit about your adventures in SF, man? I mean, you've had,
Yeah, well, like I said, I did 26 years in total time. The first 10 was infantry, and of those 10 years infantry, 6 of those were LERS. So
all of your time, you've been on jump status the whole time.
yeah, except for like the first half, the first part of the first ID, and the first half of the initial second ID until we got on jump status that summer.
Well, yeah,
Um,
but I mean, yeah,
yeah,
you're
every
pretty,
unit was on jump status. I
you,
went on. So
yeah, I mean, that's a pretty impressive thing to do for 26 years, buddy.
yeah,
Stay on
I want
staff.
to say I say it's pretty lucky in my
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Until like another 10 years from now, maybe I won't say it's lucky when I can't even walk no more. But I mean, I haven't had no major injuries from my jumps, no malfunctions. I had one tree landing on all my time. That was
Well,
in SF on a GMRS release over at St. Mary. No, it wasn't even St. Mary. It was, what was it? I forget what drop center it was. One of the smaller ones on Bragg.
yeah.
And, but yeah, so I went to Suction 94. And then beginning 95, went to the Q course as an 18 Charlie.
Mhm.
Uh, got done with 18 Charlie, went to language school for Portuguese, never used it. Got signed to third group and got signed to Bravo Company, third group, ODA 381. And our team back then, our ODAs, we had 3 battalions. We didn't have that fourth battalion yet. And we were orientated to a specific country.
Mhm.
So we were orientated to Rwanda. And I'm standing there like, oh, that's funny. Because when I was in '04, in '94, standing in
Yeah.
the day room watching the whole genocide thing kick off on CNN and news and stuff like that in the day room, I was like, well, I never go to that shithole. Um,
Never
but
say
it
that.
actually turned out to be, yeah, never say never. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It turned out to be my favorite country, man. I love that place. The people there, and just because, we're in there doing demining training in '96 and doing a JSET, a joint combined exercise for training, teaching the commando platoon. Uh, so, I mean, I went there. My team rotated in and out there over a 3-year period, off and on, for doing different like JSETs, demining. I worked down at embassy for a while as a demining LNO. Um, but basically, loved that country. I mean, I spent a little bit of time in Ethiopia as a kid in '74, where my dad was stationed over in Addis Ababa.
Yeah.
But this is my first time being back Africa since then, so it's kind of like, huh.
Yeah.
And then, so I spent 16 years in SF. Uh, 2 years of that was a SWIC as a chief instructor for small unit tactics in phase 2. And, which is a good hitch. I actually had a great time being in that, with all the experience I have just carrying a rucksack, it was kind of a natural fit. But during when I was in SF, we actually bounced all over Africa, doing different things. So eventually, they took that country orientation away, and we started just going to different places. So we went to Nigeria and Malawi, and as company deployments and battalion deployments and stuff like that. And
Well,
I did a little bit of a hitch with a regional security team within third group that kind of works, kind of goes up to embassies and works with them a little bit, you know, and bounces around Africa a little bit more.
Yeah, a question just kind of popped in my head. Of all the African armies that you dealt with, you said you worked with a commando platoon in Rwanda and stuff. Which was the best military, would you say?
Best military? The Kenyans are professional. It's a professional. You're pretty professional. The Tanzanians are pretty professional, and but I think the best fighting soldier, is the Rwandans. I
Yeah,
mean, the RPF, what they did to the French and all that stuff down there in '94 was impressive.
yeah,
And, we learned all that when we started doing JSETs there and working with them when we were the ones stood up their commando platoon. And then I was there in '98 and as an LNO mining and working in the embassy when Congo 2 kicked off, when the second Congo War, which, you know, I guess it first one turned it from Zaire to Congo,
yeah,
and then the second one that happened in '98 was, Rwanda and those guys going back in there and then trying to alleviate that the rebels coming across the border a lot. So uh,
yeah.
those guys, they knew tactics. General Kagame actually went to US before he took over the army and
Mm,
became president of the country. So I mean, they have and we did several J sets over there. So the Zimbabweans, the pairs in Zimbabwe was pretty good too.
yeah.
But
Well, they had a lot of experience too. I mean, I
yeah,
think I think as professional soldiers in the United States, we get so focused on what wars we fought and what we've done, or out maybe our allies. That I think so. You can learn a lot from other armies and other soldiers.
oh yeah. I mean, little bush wars over there that they had to deal with off and on, and over the decades. Um, that's what when you call it a J set, joint combined exercise or training. That's basically us giving them training, and them giving us training.
Yeah,
You know, there would be some kind of cultural awareness training, some kind of training, that we learn about the country more and see different things, or, because if you're going to be oriented at a country, you got to know the country.
yeah,
You got to know the country, got to know the people, got to learn the language. Yeah, French works there, but you learn Kenyan and Rwandan, that goes way farther than French because most officers are transitioning over to English anyways because they hated the French.
yeah. Well,
So,
French influence it. I mean, French is still pretty players in Africa, but it's
mhm.
not as big as they were 50 years ago. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
mm, let's see what else.
And,
Um,
you did some Afghan stuff and Iraq
Yeah,
and
so
oh
yeah, we
man,
went over to Afghan. Yeah, we third battalion, third group went to Afghanistan at right after fifth group. Basically, relieved fifth group. So like I got over there January of '02, and we all kind of rotated back out. I want to say it was somewhere around April, May of '02. Um, but we replaced fifth group out there, participated in Operation Anaconda with them. I was actually at that time I was actually the S2 NCYC for the battalion. I was 18 Fox then because they didn't have the 18 Fox course, so we had to do the old 4187 for MOS change.
yeah,
So my team sergeant told me I was going to be an 18 Fox, so
okay,
4187 I became an 18 Fox.
yeah,
Uh, so basically that's 18 Fox, the intel sergeant, assistant operations. So and then so I was running after doing 18 Fox and places like Bosnia and stuff like that. I went on and became the battalion S2 NCYC.
mm,
And I did that for, two battalion trips, one to Mali, one to Nigeria. And then Nigeria was actually during 2001. 9/11 happened right before we went over there. So we were over Nigeria right after 9/11. And then after that, we came back for Christmas and then we went over to Afghanistan.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Um,
full
then
tour.
after, yeah, and after that, came back and I did that RST team for a little bit, about 3 years. And then I went to ODA 395 and we went to Iraq in '05. Went up to Talafar to
Mm,
assist. We had two companies go assist fifth group with training up all the battalions, Iraqi infantry battalions.
mhm.
And it was also during a little bit of that surge 0506 time frame when Iraq got really spicy. So,
Yeah, it was. I was working over there as a contractor in 05 and it was challenging.
yeah.
And, mm,
And
well,
then made the 8 list. I think I'm going to take over a team, but instead I got levied for SWIC. I got SWIC orders, and I couldn't get out of them because we had a lot of guys in SWIC who made it or hadn't been on the team for a while, so they were coming back, and we were going over to SWIC. So that's when I became the chief instructor over at SUT, and I did that for about 2 years, and then supposed to be a 4-year hitch, but I squeaky wheel got the grease, and I got the right air, and I got back to third group.
Hey,
So after 2 years, and they were doing rotations and back and forth to Afghanistan at that time. The funny thing is, when I signed in the group, they were kind of just got back from deployment, so everybody's still on leave. So I got up to S1, up to group headquarters, and the guy in charge of S1 goes, "Where are you supposed to go?" I'm like, "3rd Battalion." Wrote me orders for 3rd Battalion, so I walked down to 3rd Battalion and went to battalion headquarters, and battalion CSM wasn't there. There was a couple, S3 sergeant majors over there, and they said now CSM makes those decisions. So I was like, all right. So I walked down to Bravo Company, my old company, all right, and I started off in the group. I went down there and walked in BCO, and there was a E7 there and B team ops, and I was talking to him for a little bit, just kind of listed a bunch of information, what goes on, who's in charge of what. Found out that my good buddy Marcus Holly was a company sergeant major.
mhm.
So I was like, huh. So I walked out, got on my phone, and called Marcus and said, "Hey, man, I'm about to occupy by force your B team ops sergeant." It's like, what? Yeah, I got orders for back in group, and I'm going to occupy by force, and take over your B team since you don't have an E8 there. He's like, "Oh, hold on one minute. Let me make a phone call." So he calls, I guess the CSM comes back, "Hey, you're cleared hot." So I walk back in and say, hey, I forget the guy's name, it was E7, but basically I said, "Hey, I'm your B team ops sergeant now." So I think he was relieved.
He was probably glad he was probably wanting to go back to an ODA anyway. Or
Oh, yeah, I think he did eventually. And the funny thing is, I think I did that for about a year, maybe. I got there in 08, got back in 08. I know I did that thing like 6 months, and that's it. Because as everybody came off block leave, we started 4th Battalion up, started getting heavy filling at the 4th Battalion ODAs, because my old team 381 is now 3321. So so Marcus tells me that the group sergeant major Terry Peters, another great sergeant major in group, offered me a team in 4th Battalion. And I was like, I don't want to leave 3rd Battalion. I don't want to leave. This is where I grew up at in SF. So Marcus goes, hold on a minute. So he walks down the hallway to 3321, my original ODA, and he talks to the team sergeant and offers him a 2-year team sergeant hitch over at 4th Battalion. So instead of having just 2 years, he's going to have like a total of 3 years team sergeant time. He's like, yeah, I'll take it.
yeah,
So off he goes to 4th Battalion, and I go down to my original team in 3321. So
yeah.
it was a win-win situation. So
Sometimes stars
uh,
align.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I had a great team there. We went back to Afghanistan in 2010.
Mhm.
Uh, had some great people on that team, and the rotations. We did build stability operations in a place called Chamkani, and warrant officer did some outstanding things on that trip, and you got he's one of the guys that you get put in for valor awards, you get put in a position. We got our butt in the sling basically, and he stepped up and did some heroic stuff, and
That's
was
great.
rightly recognized for that stuff. So, um,
That's great.
and
So,
then, but I already had in my mind that I was going to retire when I was on that rotation. At the end of that rotation, I was like, "Hey, this is it for me." And before we went on that rotation, I was walking with my friend Marcus Holly, company
yeah,
sergeant major, right? So walking down the sidewalk over to battalion headquarters, and he goes, "I heard you turned down E9 board." I'm like, "Yeah, I did it twice." He's like, "Why the hell you do that?" I'm like, "I don't want your job. I don't want to be a company sergeant major,
yeah,
because this is not what it used to be when you and I both came to group, because you got there well before I did. As company sergeant majors back then, you took your company out and you did training and you actually did stuff. Now it's like you're pushing emails and you're going to meetings and you're doing phone calls and you're not really training anybody. You're more, it's not what I wanted to end my career on. So I
yeah.
just did the E8 and finished up, did my last rotation and retired out of that. So I
Cool.
retired
Well,
in
you got a
2011.
website now. So now,
Yeah. So retired in 2011, and I stayed around there around Fort Bragg area and did some contracting with a company there in Fayetteville. And I did that for 2 years and found myself back in Afghanistan. Start contracting over there with supporting with manned ISR. over in country, and I did contracting overseas for about a total of 9 years.
Mm.
7 of those were in Afghanistan, 2 were over in Africa, and about 2 years ago, beginning of 2022, uh, my last position was no longer required in Africa, so they moved me back here, and I work from home. At least for now, I work from home.
Yeah.
Uh, but so
Well, you've got a website, man. Tell us about that.
Silver Creek Tactical is a company that I kind of started back in still around Fort Bragg area after I retired, and kind of kicked it back up here when I moved down here to New Mexico in 2015. But I kind of went on the back burner because all the overseas trips and stuff like that. But since I'm working from home now and looking, trying to get it a little more robust, and started it back up again. And got a website, simplecreektactical.com. It's more about preparedness for tactical preparedness, adventure preparedness, disaster preparedness. I got a blog site on there. Got some swag. Also, to the company I work with to get T-shirts and stuff like that, and mugs, stuff like that. I made some T-shirts for the guys for the Long Range Reconnaissance Association rally. So first, second ID guys, I made some T-shirts for those guys, and got some T-shirts for my company and stuff. So working on other things, trying to expand it and do more things with it. We do training, but I got I got a couple individuals that I work with that I met during contracting. But we trying to get some things set up locally here, and then maybe do some
Well,
better things later on.
I tell you what, we'll definitely put the link in the show. And
Mhm.
hey, friends, hey, all our barrel chested freedom fighters out there, man. I think this has been one of our better shows. I really do.
Oh,
We got
appreciate
definitely down. We got down in the weeds,
it.
like
Yeah.
a good alert soldier would do. Um, and then I'm definitely going to put the link for your website.
Okay. Appreciate it.
So, and maybe I'll be able to get to see you at the rally this year. Maybe I won't. We'll see.
Yeah. I'll be there the last few days.
Okay,
I have a vacation to do, and then I come back and I road trip out there.
good
So I'll
deal.
get there last 2 days there.
All right, Ringo, man, I appreciate it and
All right.
thank you. And
I
for the
appreciate it.
rest of you barrel chested freedom fighters, continue to train, watch your six. God bless America, and God bless each and every one of you.